Spotlight.
This is Akashvani. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on Samvidhan Hatya Diwas, 50 years of imposition of emergency. The participants are Virender Kapoor, political analyst and author. Moderator is Anubha Rohatgi.
It has been 50 years since the emergency was imposed in the country on June 25th, 1975. It continued for 21 months till its withdrawal on March 21st, 1977. Political analyst and author Virender Kapoor now joins me to discuss the emergency, what happened during that period, its ramifications and other issues. Mr. Kapoor, welcome to Akashvani's Spotlight program.
Thank you.
Mr. Kapoor, what was the political climate in the country before the imposition of emergency in 1975? What were the overt as well as the covert reasons for declaring it?
I think the climate was building against Indira Gandhi. She was morally beaten and she felt that in the normal circumstances, after the Allahabad High Court judgment order holding her election to the Lok Sabha null and void, she ought to have resigned as per the tradition. But she didn't resign. And JP movement was at its peak, but essentially confined to, again, the North India. The South was always away from this kind of politics, although DMK did. But morally wounded Mrs. Gandhi, on the advice of Sanjay Gandhi and others, her wayward son, they imposed emergency because she felt in her conscience that she ought to have resigned. So if she didn't resign, in order to quell this voice of protest, mainly from the opposition parties and their activists, she put all of them in jail overnight. And the emergency was imposed without first going through the cabinet and taking its approval, which was taken subsequently. And you arrested all main leaders and that by activists of opposition parties.
Right. How was the constitution impacted during the 21 months that the emergency was in place, right after the emergency was imposed? And which provisions were affected? And how did this impact civil liberties and democratic institutions?
Main assault was on fundamental right. Your right to speak freely. The main thing is that freedom of expression, freedom of the press, freedom to assemble peacefully anywhere in the country. When you suspended the constitution, in the main you are saying you suspended the civic rights of the people. So you could arrest anybody and there was no redressal in any court of law in the country. This was the main assault on the constitution. Without the fundamental rights, we don't have a democratic constitution. And that democratic constitution was held, upturned by Mrs. Gandhi with one fell stroke of the emergency.
The emergency is often referred to as one of the darkest chapters in India's democratic history. Can you tell us what the role of Parliament was and how it functioned during the emergency?
Parliament, without the emergency, was also a rubber stamp for the Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, because she had quelled all traces of dissent and opposition within the party. There were a handful of people like Chandrasekhar and Mohan Dharia and Krishan Kant, couple of what they call the young turks, but they were not important numerically. Whole thing hinged because this became one-person party, one leader party. And the Führer complex took over frontally in this country. Mrs. Gandhi said, in fact, Barua said, the Congress president said Indira is India's Indira.
Right.
That reflects the state of the parliament also. Parliament was more or less a rubber stamp before that, but it became more so during the emergency.
You just said that, of course, during the emergency, there was suspension of fundamental rights. Would you consider that to be a blow to the spirit of the Indian Constitution?
Not to the spirit, to the very letter of the Indian Constitution. Without fundamental rights, you'd cease to be a democratic country. You'd cease to be a democratic constitution. I mean, authoritarianism, what is authoritarian? One is the unlawful arrest. But you made unlawful arrest lawful during the emergency. At least now, in a democratic setup, when you arrest somebody without reason, he or she can go and knock on the door of the courts.
Right.
In those days, you couldn't.
No, you're talking about the courts, of course.
Courts also became an adjunct, and this is a very sorry thing. The highest judiciary in the land became an extension of the ruling party. And as for the media, it is a myth that the media was free before the emergency. Media on its own tended to be pro-establishment for the simple reason the ownership pattern of the media those days was such that the owners looked up to the establishment for various favors, licenses and quotas. There were hardly a newspaper known for its bold and free coverage. Statesman and Indian Express took up the cudgels for freedom during the emergency. Otherwise, every other paper fell in line. Every other paper actually was in line even before the emergency.
Can you elaborate a little bit more, because we're talking about censorship and how it was not just confined to the press. In your opinion, would you say, did censorship extend to the legislature, the executive and even the judiciary?
Censorship, in the rare case of a legislator who was not arrested and he stood up in a, let's say, in assembly or parliament and he spoke, not a word could be reported. Even though the law is in place that whatever you say on the floor of the house can be reported without any fear of libel or defamation. But you could not report a line without clearing it first with the authorities. You could not even leave blank space in a newspaper as a mark of protest. That would also get black marks from the censors. So much so, there's a very famous case of singer Kishore Kumar being invited for a youth congress function and he declined, and they banned his songs on the AIR. So even the film industry was affected. Very small news media. That news media lived in fear along with the rest of the country. Some newspapers like Indian Express and the small magazine Tughlaq from Madras,
yes,
and a couple of others like Frontline and one or two others from A.D. Gorowal, I still remember, former ICS, who used to bring out an 8-page sheet. They continued to write. But otherwise, not a word could be written against emergency.
But what about the role of judiciary, the courts? Because when there is a suspension of fundamental rights, most people would approach the court to restore their rights. What was the role of the courts and the judiciary in this case?
It's very unfortunate when you say that darkest chapter in the history of the country. It was darkest chapter in the judicial history of the country also. Mrs. Gandhi had superseded 3 senior-most Supreme Court judges to appoint her own favorite, Justice A.N. Ray, as the Chief Justice. In the habeas corpus matter, Jabalpur case, the High Court rightly defended and upheld the habeas corpus petition. They reversed that, and during their prolonged hearing arguments, this exchange took place between the court, one of the judges, and the Virender. The court asked him, one of the judges asked him, are you saying if you kill somebody on the road and he or his relations or survivors don't have any remedy? Virender said, no, my lord, in the emergency, there is no remedy if we kill somebody without reason. Not only that, this is very audacious, in fact, that then Home Minister later on, S.V. Chauhan, he said the opposition should feel itself lucky, fortunate that they were only locked up, they were not killed. Meaning that we had the right to kill you, but we were so kind to you, we only put you in jail, we didn't kill you. Emergency was totally unruly affair where Sanjay Gandhi and his stormtroopers ruled the roost in the name of what you call, Binoba Bhabhe had said mistakenly, Anushasan, the period of discipline or thing.
Right.
That is totally bogus. There was no discipline. The Youth Congress and others close to Sanjay Gandhi, they were ruling the roost from the streets of Delhi.
What happened to the rights of the ordinary citizens? How did the emergency affect their lives?
I don't think the ordinary people were affected directly, only insofar as they lived in fear. They were uprooted from their homes in the inner city. Overnight, they were put far away. Now, of course, it's part of the city. The city has expanded, but what is called now settlement colonies. You forcibly remove them from Turkman Gate and other slums in and around the city. And then you overnight force them to 30 miles away or 40 miles away now that Delhi has expanded. Otherwise, all your resettlement colonies were created during the emergency. The ordinary man, actually more than the city, urban area, the semi-urban area, in the countryside, lived in fear of sterilization, forcible Naswandi, as they said. In fact, I still maintain one reason Congress lost in 1977 was not for the love of democratic rights or civic rights, because it was the fear of Naswandi that gripped the entire countryside.
Right.
People in Haryana, UP, in the villages, slept in other places, left their homes for fear of being picked up by police. In Haryana and Western UP, the police were given, the SHOs were given quotas that you have to pick up 2,000 people in your jurisdiction this week and force them to have a sterilization. Right. So it was an anti-sterilization campaign of Sanjay Gandhi, which affected them directly far more than anything else.
How did you hear about the imposition of the emergency? I would like to hear about some of your personal experiences during this period.
Well, I was a correspondent with Financial Express, and I continued to act as if there was no emergency. It didn't matter to me till they arrested me sometime in October 75, because there was a civic reception for the Commonwealth parliamentary delegates. H.K.L. Bhagat was presiding. And a group of people, Jansangh RSS boys, 15-20 of them, they singing of the national anthem. They shouted this slogan, up with democracy, down with the dictatorship. And the police in large numbers were there. So were the Sanjay Gandhi's people. They started beating them up and arresting those boys. So there was this lady who was holding a 14, 15-year-old boy strongly by his grip, and other chaps with her, they were raining blows on him. So I said, why are you beating up this boy? What crime has he done? Has he done any crime? He's only saying up with democracy, down with dictatorship. So she got angry at it, and she said, you are with them? I said, I'm only asking you a question. Has he done any crime? So that's how they dragged me in, put MISA and DIR, and I was in jail for 10 months. The fact remains that I was a jail cog. That thousands of people were arrested.
Right. So before the emergency, India had seen the rule of only one party, the Congress. How did this chapter in Indian democracy shape and impact the opposition?
Before the emergency, the opposition was divided. Emergency forced them to come together. And the four parties became and formed Janata Party. But unfortunately, even after terminating the rule of law and upturning the constitution, she still managed to get 150 seats, which itself tells you how much Indian people love their constitution. She, in my view, if you are really a Democrat at heart, ordinary Indians, then they wouldn't have voted for her at all. On top of it, she came back in 1980.
Yes.
And continued to, she and her son. The point is that emergency for ordinary people, they all forgot about emergency. It mattered little that she had imposed the emergency. Her son ruled the roost. He was an extra constitutional authority. And all kinds of excesses were committed in emergency. But yet, she comes back. I mean, it's no excuse that the Janata Party, they were fighting amongst themselves. They could have settled for anybody but Indira Gandhi. People know how to create an alternative, but they didn't. They went back to Mrs. Gandhi. And all traces of emergency, meaning people, Shah Commission reports were suppressed. Then not only Congress, other regimes also forgot about the lessons of emergency.
That is my very last question to you. What is the one most important lesson that you think that the emergency taught us that we should have learned or we should learn from the emergency?
I'm a cynic. I think that if Mrs. Gandhi had not imposed the emergency and if she had continued as Prime Minister, unheeding the precedent of resigning, following election being set aside, nothing would have happened. I mean, if some opposition parties would have continued to protest, but protests would have petered out. Because all said and done, moral authority lies with those who hold the political office. People can't go and enforce that moral authority. I can't force the Prime Minister or the Minister to resign in case he's found with his hand in the till. This is again a total unconcern for political morality and in this case even political legality, which forced her, enjoined upon her to resign, especially after the Supreme Court, Justice V.R. Krishna here, refused to give her a full stay on Allahabad High Court judgment. He said that you can continue as an MP, but you cannot vote and you cannot draw salary.
Mr. Virender Kapoor, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your views on this very important period in Indian democracy, that is of emergency. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on Samvidhan Hatya Diwas, 50 years of imposition of emergency. The participants were Virender Kapoor, political analyst and author. Moderator was Anubha Rohatgi. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of Akashvani. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may share your feedback about this program through email at airnsttalks@gmail.com or WhatsApp on 9289094044.
Spotlight.